Welcome to the Messy Middle Road Trip podcast. We are thrilled to have women's health advocate Nathalie Bonafé joining us in the convertible today. A native of France, Nathalie is a doctor in philosophy and biology and health with a focus in molecular biology and biochemistry. Nathalie moved to the United States in 1994 to pursue her career in biomedical research and at the National Institutes of Health, Yale Medical School, and the biotech industry. In her mid to late 40s, Nathalie outgrew her corporate suit, became aware of her purpose, and started her own enterprise as a women's health and end-of-life advocate. She now provides individualized education and coaching, advocating for personal choices and autonomy. She is highly trained and holds numerous certifications. Nathalie's mission is to change the conversation about living well, aging well, and dying well to help bring more clarity, focus, perspective, and empathy into our culture. She believes that each of us has the right to know about options and possibilities as we age, especially in midlife. She recently established a Menopause Cafe in Connecticut for women and men to gather together to discuss all things midlife and menopause while supporting one another in a safe space. We know you'll love it, so let's grab the snacks, call shotgun, and hit the road for another episode.
I'm Sandra.
And I'm Nicole. And we're entrepreneurs,
Wives,
a mom,
a favorite auntie,
creative souls,
and women who are fearlessly navigating the middle of life.
We created a community of women over 40 who embrace the past, appreciate where we are now, and take action to live our best life because it's all about the journey. Welcome, Nathalie. Thanks so much for being here today.
Thank you so much, Nicole and Sandra, for having me.
Absolutely.
It's a pleasure being with you.
You bet. Well, you know, we start off every show with asking our guests our famous question. If you could run off on an epic road trip with any person living or dead, who would it be? And bonus points if you know where you're going.
So I had to think a little bit about it. And actually, I would like to go on a road trip with my mom.
Oh, tell me about that.
So my mom is 83 years old. And we've had road trips before, but never together. It was always my dad. And nothing wrong with my dad, but it's never been a trip just the two of us as grown women, as grown and confident women. So I'd like to go back to places we've actually been together, but not just together. So that would be a trip from New Haven to Quebec and New England. And that would be basically going through New York, Ontario, the Niagara Falls, and then Montreal, the rest of Quebec, and coming back through Vermont for like about a week, and staying in Airbnbs and little farms and laughing and singing in the car. I think there would be places that you feel comfortable with, and we'll be able to fix all the things that we didn't like about the past trips from 20 years ago when I was, a little bit younger and my brain was on hormones. And a little bit too much ego, and
And I can imagine it would be such a different space because when you are a young mother and you're trying to plan a road trip with children, the stress level is high. You're trying to pre-plan everything and get the agenda and who's feeding who and bathroom stops and fitting it all in. Whereas if you did it this way, it would be much less stress and just go with the flow and stop where you want to stop, and you don't have to answer to anyone. I love that.
It would be very easy, actually, the two of us. And my mom has aged very well, actually. So I think that would be fun. If she could, come to the US, that would be great. Next year.
Absolutely, because she's in France right now, correct?
I haven't been able to see my parents yet.
Oh.
Yeah, that's hard.
COVID has affected everyone.
Of course.
Yeah.
But they are healthy, so that's okay.
Yeah, good. Can I jump in and ask a couple of questions of you, Nathalie?
Absolutely.
Great. Did you enter the biomedical field with the intention of working with people in transitions, specifically midlife and end of life?
That's a good question. I actually entered the biomedical field basically doing research. I worked with other researchers, and I was essentially interested in, at the time, essentially interested in really solving problems at the molecular level, under the microscope. That's what I thought I wanted to do, because I think I lacked confidence, and I thought that's where I was the most comfortable working. And but increasingly I realized that I was very interested in working with other people in teams. So that's really evolved progressively over time, and experiences, good and not so good experiences, how we grow. I really became interested in really managing those interactions for the work to go smoothly and results, to come out. And it's not until about 10 years ago that when I volunteered at the Yale New Haven Hospital with the elderly, that I realized I really loved people.
Yeah, yeah. What was it specifically about the elderly?
I don't know, about 10 years ago, I had lost my grandmother. I think it was kind of 10, 13 years ago. And I felt the need to really connect with people who were vulnerable.
Yeah.
So yeah, I think that was particularly good with interacting with people in situation of vulnerability. And that really, that kept growing, that kept developing. And I think that's when I realized I was an empath.
Beautiful. What a nice realization, and then to act upon it.
Absolutely. That's a life-changing moment right there. Where you step into your power of who you were meant to be.
Yes.
I just got goosebumps.
Yes. Well, a lot of women who are empath are actually being asked to, moderate their emotions and to work, very, very, just not talking about their emotions at work. And that's where I was. And I actually needed that. And it had been suppressed. And the more talking with other people, the more I realized that it was actually a part of me that I needed to develop.
Yeah. It's interesting when we lean into those places, when we lean into those parts of ourselves that really make us quite special, and it is one of our superpowers, then we are moving toward the work that we're really meant to be doing.
Yes, with no regrets from the past, but just taking what we had done in the past and going into that, road trip with that backpack and exploring other, environments and cultures, because it is the different culture too.
Absolutely.
Yeah, for sure.
So Nathalie, you were quoted in the Hartford Courant as saying, menopause is a major taboo. Hot flashes and brain fog, nobody wants to talk about them in the workplace or at home. People roll their eyes. An entire generation of women don't know how to take care of ourselves. We're missing opportunities to educate ourselves, to decide what to do with the rest of our lives. Why is it so hard to talk about menopause?
I wish I had all the answers.
I know.
Well, so I did some research, because at first I was exploring with women around me. My mom, my sister, we always start with family and then girlfriends. And then I did some research, because I am a researcher. That's how my brain functions. So basically, menopause is considered a loss, a struggle, the end of fertility, the end of sexuality for some. So I was looking at what was happening at the end of the 19th century, the beginning of the 20s, with all the changes in the world and people getting older too. What they were saying is like menopause is the end of the woman in the woman. What a horrible term. I've also seen menopause is the death of the womb.
You've got it, yeah.
Womb. And so if you combine menopause, right? And often there is fear of death at that time because we didn't, most women and men actually used to die in their 50s. You know, we used to die a lot younger. You combine menopause with death and you double the taboo. And I think that's where it's coming. I think that's where it's coming from. It is coming from. And then, you know, still to today, I don't know anyone who is comfortable talking about having hot flashes.
Yeah.
You know, sweating, you know, in a suit or in a dress, or I don't know anyone who is comfortable talking about mood swings.
Nathalie, can I ask you a question? This makes me think a little bit about menstruation. How, like, young girls and adult women have a hard time talking about menstruation, even just going to the store and buying supplies during that time. Like, I can't tell you how often as a young woman I would hide the boxes of tampons or pads in my cart. And it, you know, it is a natural thing that happens to all women.
It is. You know, I also realized that in the statistics, women are also reluctant to talk about it to their healthcare providers. So even, you know, a lot of women of our age would talk to their daughters about menstruation. I've talked to a lot of my friends, and their mothers kind of, you know, gave them a little special box, you know, like, you're entering womanhood. Here is a tampon, you know, here is a here is a little serviette, and here's what you need to do for your makeup. And so it's coming, right? But my mom did not do that, for instance, but she's in her 80s, so, you know, maybe she just didn't know. I think younger mom have done that. It is still very taboo. I don't know. You know, if I ask my husband to buy me a box of tampons, he would do it, but he would roll his eyes.
Yeah. Yeah. So it's very interesting.
It's a good point.
So I wonder if we can talk a little bit about menopause awareness and, you know, improving the collective and individual clarity around that and choices as we age. Can you elaborate a little bit on that idea?
Sure. I think, so let me put it that way. So I'm going to say talk at the first place, because I would eventually like everybody to think as using the I, because what applies for me might apply to you or not quite. So if I were to be more aware of the changes happening to me, okay, I can learn to accept them and to manage them. Okay, so I'm starting with the I, I'm starting with the individual. So that's self-awareness. As a result, my quality of life will improve, right? And the impact that, you know, if I'm happy, you know, I will have a more positive impact around me. My husband will be happy, you know, my neighbors, the people I interact with, all the people in my life. So, so the impact, the negative impact of my mood swings or other uncomfortable things that are happening to me, the impact on the others will be minimized, right? So my relationships will not be suffering as much. So you see already, so I'm coming out of the I, of the me, and I'm going into the closer circle. And it means I have increased my social awareness. If I'm aware of myself, I will be more aware of who's around me. And I will also prevent chronic diseases down the road, dementia, heart disease, diabetes. You know, if I'm more aware of how I feel, I will try to nourish myself with things that are beneficial for me. And I will want to feel better. So it means I will minimize the burden on my children as I age. I do not have children, but I'm talking in general, okay? If it's not me with my children, it could be on my siblings or on my nephew and nieces, in this case, or my husband. I will age more happily. I will be able to manage my money. I will be able to make my choices for aging. And I will have a better influence on my community. I will be able to volunteer. I will be able to, you know, go teach kids or read at the library and do more as a volunteer in my community. And I'll be able to do more things for my planet. This is how I see the effects. And we are so many of us that we have a role to play. And we're not necessarily aware of it. And we really have the potential to help ourselves, younger generation, and older generations. That's how I see it. What do you think?
Yeah,
I love that thought.
And I think when we're informed and when we're able to share ideas of what we're feeling and perhaps ways in which we take care of ourselves, that can only be beneficial to others. I mean, you know, it's interesting as I was preparing for our conversation. So I recently turned 50. I could be in the midst of perimenopause. I'm not sure. There are lots of things that I don't know about menopause. And I'm very excited about this conversation because I feel like when I know more, I can take care of myself better and I can also prepare for it. And that, like you say, when you are feeling good, when you are taking care of yourself, that benefits everyone around you.
Absolutely. And I want to add too that I love the concept of understanding that this is normal, that we cannot label menopause as though it's an affliction, that it's something that's happening at us or to us. It's that it's a part of a transition and a phase of life. Just like we go through puberty, we go through our menopause. And some folks have stronger, more pronounced symptoms than others. For example, I can share that 2 years ago, now this is prior to, I've been on a health journey for a bit now, but I've really dug in the last 2 years to really focus on healing my autoimmune. Prior to that, I will tell you that I wasn't 100% healthy with my food choices and alcohol and just different things. And I can remember waking up in the morning in a cold sweat that stunk like I was a teenage boy. And I had not experienced that ever in my life, like to the point that I couldn't even stand myself getting up out of bed. And I thought, what on earth is going on? This is crazy. And so I shared it with a girlfriend because I thought I was losing my mind because, again, like you, Natalie, like my mother never explained anything that could happen with menopause moving forward. I remember small conversations with my mother's friends or maybe a coworker where they shared, oh, I had a hot flash, but I wasn't really aware of what that was, or overheating, or your body trying to purge whatever it's going through. But then after really paying attention to how I was eating, my exercise, mindfulness with meditation and movement with yoga, like that changed. So it was a very brief period that I went through that. I'll say like maybe a few weeks at best. And then it transitioned away because I was digging in and focusing on how can I better heal my body, and how can I nourish my body, like you were saying. And oftentimes when we hold on to that label of, oh, I'm going through perimenopause, and that negativity that surrounds it, it takes away from what you were saying, where you're asking yourself, well, how do I want to show up to the world? Do I want to be known as the angry woman that shows up to a business meeting, having a hot flash and being belligerent that I'm there? And, like, you really have to
stereotype.
Yes. And
the stereotype.
And how do you want to show up? And that we're in control of that. We're not necessarily in 100% control of the things that will happen during menopause, but I truly believe that how we treat our bodies can change the symptoms that we're going through. They can lessen them. They can maybe shorten the period of time that you go through them. So yeah, I love that perspective. I think
it's really what I found, and it's also because I found myself, I'm not talking about it today, but it's also because I found myself in various situations of vulnerability. And, when you're left with a shock like that, like something is wrong with us, right? Physically, emotionally, whether it's a disease process, whether it's a breakup, whether it's the death of somebody we love, it's really digging into that vulnerability and saying, I'm not well. I'm accepting the fact that I'm not myself. I feel that I want to cry. I feel sad. It's acceptance of that grief. The grief is not just, when we lose somebody, and having working with people at the end of life, we often talk about grief, but that grief of like, I'm not that healthy woman who was on the top of her world, a month ago, a year ago, 5 years ago, with, the brain on hormones being immortal. When we feel something is not right with us, just acknowledges that we're not well. That's the first step. And then we can take action. It seems very, very simple, but it's actually going against the ego and going against and really going through accepting the grief that we're actually going through emotions because we've lost something.
Right. And making sure that you don't
Intimate.
hold on to that, right?
Mm-hmm. The anger is part of grief.
Can last a long time. And who wants to it's okay to hold on to that grief and acknowledge it. And like you said, take action to move through it. If that means that you need to see a therapist, or you need to
absolutely
to talk about it. Yeah. To help you process and to flip it from being, again, an affliction, and take the power back on that. So that's fantastic. I love that.
It's acknowledging the change.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
Every change is very complex, and in this society we have a hard time dealing with change.
Mm-hmm. Indeed, we do,
as we know.
That should be on a t-shirt.
Yeah. I have a friend who has been going through menopause for a couple of years now, and the last time I saw her, she told me, I really miss having my period. And I thought, what are you, crazy? And she really loved being a mother. She loved motherhood. She loved, I think that there were certain things that she felt each month. And she really misses being in that cycle, being in that process. So I think it is really different for everyone. And there is no need to feel shame around the things that are happening to us. And I think that that's some of what we feel and some of what keeps us quiet.
Yes, because we also each unique. We are each unique. It comes from our genetics. It comes from our environment, our upbringing. And some women are going to be missing the motherhood.
Yeah.
Some women are going to feel, freer. Some women are going to feel anxious because they think it's the end of their sexuality or sexual life. Everyone is going to experience it differently. That's why it's really an individualized. That's why there is no cookie cutter method. But it really starts with that emotional intelligence, with really like acknowledging our emotions and being able to talk about this and understanding what others experience.
Yeah. Can you talk a little bit about the biology of menopause? I mean, I think that we understand what what menopause is, but why is it happening? What's it about?
Mm-hmm. So the awareness really starts with being able to feel the biological and physiological changes. We're talking about normal physiological changes in most women, even for women who have had to have a surgery or chemo, and it's really affecting. So what's really, and being able to put a name on it, that's really what I believe. It's like, we have, what are the physiological changes and what are they called? Really starts with that. That's what's reassuring. So do you remember when you were a teenager?
Vaguely.
Well, depending how old your children are. So you remember the first periods, right? And the following years where, we're very resistant and stubborn and responding to, parents and friends with that aggression. Well, this is when your ovaries, mine, yours, ovaries started to function. Okay, and we're starting to have menstruations. We started menstruating, meaning, every month we have an egg that would come and go through the system of the ovaries. And if it's not fertilized, it's going to end up, you're going to end up bleeding. I'm making a little bit general, right? Let's not get too much into the details. And so it's also the time where we get at puberty, when we get a large amount of hormones, of sexual hormones come into our system. So you're talking about estrogen and progesterone and also testosterone, because when the ovaries are functioning properly, they secrete various amounts of these three hormones. And it's really the balance between the three that is affecting our entire body. So once we're used to it, we get more stable, and this is womanhood and, active fertility times, etc. Well, basically, so already at that time, you had a sudden influx of hormones. Well, at menopause, our ovaries stop. Slowly, at perimenopause, when I talk about menopause, it includes perimenopause and postmenopause. So the whole idea is like already in our 30s and 40s, the natural process, we're going to lose the amount of eggs in the basket. And our ovaries are not going to be able to produce as much of these three hormones and all the derivatives as before. So at first we won't be feeling it that much. And then, because it's a very, very busy time in our lives between managing families and work and responsibilities, aging parents, children, we get really, really stressed. So you have cortisol that is being secreted in the body by the adrenal glands. The adrenal glands also secrete some of the sex hormones. So you add stress, you have less of the different hormones, your body is like out of balance. And something that we didn't really know until the 90s, is like this sex hormones really affect the brain. We didn't know that as much as the rest of the body. Not just the sexual activities, but also the brain. And that's the real biology that I'm talking about. And it's finding that balance and managing the changes that we need to do at menopause to go through it more peacefully. Does it make sense?
It does.
Yeah.
Would you say that it affects the brain when you're dealing with the adrenals and you're dealing with all of that? I've heard so many women share that they've had a loss in sex drive. They use the excuse of, I'm raising my family, or I have a busy career and I have no energy for that, or whatever. But really what might be going on is all of that connecting with the brain, that it's flipping off a switch for that sexuality. And a lot of it too might even be our own self-perception and how our brain interprets that with an aging body, and maybe seeing ourselves not in the way that we want to. We're not that 20-year-old in bikini anymore. And are we okay where we are today at 50, 60, 70? Does that?
Yes. Well, those hormones are affecting pretty much all the body parts, affecting the heart, affecting the muscles. It's harder to, exercise. Affecting our bones, affecting our skin, more skin products, affecting our libido, affecting, our skin is a little bit, it's what's the most visible. Yes, it's affecting our waistline too, because all of this is affecting the entire body, including the brain, including all of the neurotransmitters, actually, that I was writing. So because it's also affecting the brain, and there is this constant communication between the ovaries, the hypothalamus in the brain, and all the different organs, there is this communication that makes us really secrete a certain neurotransmitters that are really, really important for information processing, and how we communicate. And so how we communicate with others, with ourselves, depression, neurotransmitters, depression, serotonin, dopamine, we just questioning, we are becoming very much as teenagers, we are vulnerable. We have a lot more knowledge than teenagers, and we have more experience than teenagers. So by becoming aware of this, we can regain control. But the biology, it's crazy inside. I remember my professor of physiology, first year college, because I was already specialized in biology, and he was this older man, and he was talking about the sex hormones, affecting the brain, and he was talking about storms. Well, think about storms. It's really a storm. What do we do when there is a storm outside? How do we manage that storm? How do we stay calm?
It's so funny because when you said that, I just kept imagining, like, the eye of the storm is right in the center, right? You have the ability to stay in that calm, safe space if you choose to take action to do that. Otherwise, you can get swept up in it and allow what's happening to transform you in a negative space. And
it's what we are, in general, collectively, we are not, there are exceptions, of course, we are not fully prepared for that, because we are basically told to keep doing. And this stage requires to come down It's by coming down that we are going to be able to keep going and doing. But there is this stage where it's really important to assess what's coming and stay grounded, and then design the rest 50 years of our lives.
Mm.
So
I have kind of a big question, which is one, how do we as women, how do we navigate that and take care of ourselves? But beyond that, you know, which I think once we come to terms with things, we can make shifts in our life so that we can take care of ourselves. How do we then, how do people in the outside world, whether it's our employer or otherwise, how do they also appreciate and acknowledge that this is real, that these things are happening, and to take care of us as well?
Like,
it's a big question.
It's a big question. So I can only share some aspects of it. What I've learned is the best way to convince others. And some people have learned it in business school, okay? I have learned it as an entrepreneur, right? I cannot sell what I want to offer unless I believe in it. So I cannot tell my employer that, I cannot give my employer, which I don't have now, but I used to have, I cannot give my employer, you know, evidence that what I'm going through is a natural process if I have not accepted it myself. So if I haven't been able to talk about it and process it with other peers. So I used to work in a man-dominated environment. Okay, so most of my managers would be men. And I would end up in my 40s in meetings with men in their 50s. You can imagine. And they would all talk about their wives and how, you know, all sorts of things about their wives. I'm not going to go into the details. And I was there as the only woman, and I felt very uncomfortable. You know, I was comfortable apparently, but I wasn't comfortable with what was going on around me. If I go and I say to these men, you know, this is normal. If I could say, hey, I've gone through that, they're going to look at me. Oh, we haven't noticed. It's true. It must be true. Oh, now I can relate to my man, to my wife. But at that time, I did not know, so I had no room for. No, I could just sit. So we first want to be aware of this as being a natural process. And it takes a little bit of education. The second thing I wanted to say is that I was very impressed with what I've learned was going on in the UK. It's a small, you know, it's a small island. But in the UK, the government is now, by attending Menopause Cafes in the UK, because it's coming from there, it was designed there, I realized that in Scotland and in England, the government had special programs for their workers about menopause. They had these big discussions and educational things and said, how can we support you? If they've done it there, we can do it too. That's why I decided to bring the Menopause Cafe here, because I've seen that it starts with talking about it. And then most of the managers are actually women. If we start by educating the women, they're going to be able to find ways, they feel better themselves, to coach or to support their colleagues. And it's not just a woman thing, it affects everyone. Absolutely. We want to be productive. We're 50% of the workforce. we matter.
Amen, sister. We sure do. And, Natalie, I know menopause as a midlife event, I think, is a new concept. And I know our parents' generation and grandparents' generation, they experienced it fully, but did that in silence for the most part. So I love that you started the Menopause Cafe in Connecticut. And I was really excited to join the one that was last week, wasn't it? Last week or the week before?
Every 15th of the month, yeah.
Yes, it was wonderful to join in, and there was majority women. There was a man that joined us because he wanted to support his partner and just understand the concept. Can you share your thoughts about the creation of the Connecticut Menopause Cafe and what you hope to achieve with it?
Well, yeah, I thought about the Menopause Cafe because I had been running death cafes, a concept that is also coming from Europe and the UK and Switzerland. And has been going on for about 10 years, close to 10 years. But the Menopause Cafe was also created in the UK about 3 years ago. So when I thought of it, I Googled it and I found it was there. So I attended a few cafes there. And I was so impressed with what other women had to share.
Like what kinds of things?
They were sharing about some of their symptoms. They were sharing, things about the type of providers to healthcare providers to go get the support that they needed for what they had.
Yeah.
I was also blown away with the discussions about what was going on at work for the government workers. I mean, just totally blown away. I mean, they have, monthly meetings about it. How are you doing? How can we help you, manage your symptoms so you can be productive? And I was like, I want to bring it here because it would give, I'm not going to run a menopause cafe for the entire world or for the UK. I've decided to bring it here. I had to give it a name since I'm in Connecticut. With the agreement from the people in Scotland, and I did sign an agreement that I would run the menopause cafes here. The same way as they had designed them. And I said, if we could create more spaces for us to talk about menopause, we have the potential to have more people wanting to run them in their states, in their towns, and as we get past COVID, in their communities, in person, in the schools, and we'll be able to create change the way they've created already in the UK.
Yeah.
We could bring OBGYNs to the discussion. I've seen an OBGYN a couple of years ago, and I asked this doctor, how could I go through menopause peacefully? And she said, what's your problem? I said, well, I don't really have a problem. But what's your problem? I can't help you unless you have a problem. And I think that's the sad part. We want to be able to listen to our body, see what could be going wrong, and then be able to go to our providers and say, listen, I'm feeling that. How can I ease into it better? So it means talking about food. It means talking about stress. Unfortunately, a healthcare provider is only going to talk about the medical problems. So I wanted to bring the cafes to kind of broaden the places where people can talk about. I'm not going to tell you how you're going to cure your specific problem. This is not my place. I'm going to say, talk to other people, ask them how have they dealt with it. Let's brainstorm together.
Yeah, yeah. A couple of years ago, I attended a death cafe nearby, and I had never heard of that. And I thought the whole thing was really fascinating to give a group of people an opportunity to talk about a phase of life that can be scary and complicated and not really talked about a lot. And during that time, people could really get into it, be supported, have their ideas validated, and to do a little bit of brainstorming, if you will, around that time in their life, so that you don't feel alone. You do feel like, okay, these things may come up for me. What will be the best way to deal with it? And for me, because it, like you said, it is different for everyone. So I'm really curious about this Menopause Cafe. I mean, again, I'm not really sure where I'm at in my own cycle, in my own place with menopause, but I've always been interested in talking about phases of life. And, I'm curious if you're finding that the women and man who have attended, if they are feeling like they're getting something out of it, like what are they getting out of it?
It's true. I'm sorry if I misuse Desk Cafe instead of Menopause Cafe, because
That's
if
okay.
I have, yeah.
You do both, so.
I do both, yes.
Yes.
I have more experience with the desk cafes, and the couple of Menopause Cafes that I've started running already went very much in the same direction, is that very safe space, where we know, say, you can say whatever you want. You just have to be respectful of the other people in the group. You don't talk over. And this is confidential. And people start opening up. And they really feel heard. And even if they have, a question or an anxiety or an bad experience, we end up all smiling and laughing and joking about taking life more lightly. There are so many reasons that could be put us to be in a depressive state. And talking about natural processes, even when there are problems, is really healing collectively. And I've even had young students from Yale attend the desk cafes, and they had a rush of dopamine. And they were like, whoa, and that's also something that I say. They felt high. They felt happy. And I don't know if you've ever been to happiness clubs, but that's how it feels. It was better than the happiness clubs I've been, because in happiness club, people talk about their problems, while in those cafes, people talk about their problems, but there is somebody else who's going to lift them up and to say, hey, I've had this too, or I'm on the other side of the hump, and it's great. You might want to look at it differently, and it's really, really warm and fuzzy.
I definitely had
people
that.
Laugh.
I had that experience when I attended the one that you just did.
You did?
I walked away from the Menopause Cafe feeling lighter, and I felt like it had filled my cup, that the men and women that shared their stories, and I believe everybody spoke that was on the Zoom. We all took turns and we all shared a little something. And some folks came at it from more of a medical perspective, where their doctor prescribed hormone therapy. There were others that came at it from more of a naturopath, acupuncture, nutrition sort of deal. But I think the biggest takeaway for me was that sense of community and camaraderie, that we are all in the thick of this, no matter what phase we're in, and that we all have a voice here, and that it was a safe place. And I remember somebody asking you, are you recording these? And you were saying no, because this is not to be shared outside of this space. This is
like a vase. This is like a vase. Remember in communities there used to be, you know, those circles. So it could be men's circles or women's circles. There are some circles like that. I know people. Like the Mankind Project. I have a male friend who goes there, and they have circles of men. And I've been to women's circles, and it's like this tribe thing. And in this particular case, men and women, and you know, every gender, every skin color, it's very inclusive. You see what I mean? It feels really inclusive. And I think a lot of us are craving for that.
Oh, absolutely these days, and for sure. But
yes.
You know, you said something about being in a safe space and feeling some form of healing, and I think that is really important when you're in a new place in your life that feels scary and uncomfortable, and to know that you're being uplifted by others who have gone through it and are doing okay.
Yes, it's what the village is supposed to be. You know, it takes a village. Remember how, you know, we like to be hugged as kids? So most of us, some of us, actually I do, you know, felt tight. You know how you take a newborn and you need to make sure that it really feels in his skin to skin, and this is the same thing. We need that. It's not just a child, it's not just a childhood thing that prepares us. At every major change in life, we need that, whether we've acknowledged it or not.
And the fact that the folks that showed up to the Menopause Cafe were willing to be open enough and vulnerable enough to share their stories and be a part of that, I think was amazing.
This fits my soul. I mean, this feels so good. This feels so good.
Well, having you on the show today, like, you filled my cup, sister. I'm so glad that you agreed to this. I'm so thrilled for our listeners to connect with you. Can you share a little bit about how people can find you, sign up for the next virtual Menopause Cafe, or even connect with you for coaching? Because I know that you're working with a lot of women in midlife that need that guidance and that support going through the different stages.
The confidence too. So right now people can find the Menopause Cafe of Connecticut, but anybody can come. Anybody who can make it to a 6 p.m. On the 15th of each Eastern time on the 15th of each month is welcome. There was a person from Hawaii. So they can find it on Eventbrite. They look for the Menopause Cafe Connecticut online, and also
free,
on
right.
It's free.
You have to get a ticket, even though it's $0.
It's totally Menopause Cafe are my free community events, and I do not sell my business. There is no agenda. Okay, so but it's also a nice way to meet me in person and to see, you know, if somebody who is likely to work with me in the future has to kind of connect with me. So that's a nice way to meet me. But I don't sell my business there. It's a matter of principle. And so when they go to my website, my current website is called thegentlerparting.com, and they can take my quiz, and I would get, you know, them to talk to me directly. They can ask me questions. There is my phone number. They can call me. They can read about my program there, and they can also sign up for my program. I do not send a lot of emails. It's actually not something that I like to receive too much, so I don't do that to others. But I will inform those who have signed up of my new website once it launches, because I am working with professionals right now, redesigning my website. And once I have the new one, there will be more content and more videos. They'll be able to find me there, find more information.
That's fantastic. And we will also put your contact information in the show notes of this show so that folks can find you, or they can always reach out to us as well, and we'll help to connect.
Absolutely.
Oh, thanks so much, Nathalie, for your time today. It was a wonderful conversation. You've really, I hope, have gotten our listeners just thinking about approaching menopause, all phases of peri and all the way through post, in a different light, and to really feel the power in it that, you know, our bodies are doing what they're meant to be doing. And, you know, thank you for your wisdom and all your shares today. We really appreciate you.
Thank you so much for having me, Sandra, Nicole. It's just a pleasure getting to know you.
Absolutely.
Thank you, Nathalie.
Thank you.
Well, we hope you enjoyed this episode of the Messy Middle Road Trip podcast and feel empowered to listen to your body and to find connection with other women, knowing that the process of menopause is a natural phenomenon.
If you want to keep the conversation going, visit us on Facebook, Instagram, or YouTube at messymiddleroadtrip.com. And if you like what we're doing, please consider subscribing to the podcast and leaving us a rating and review so we can reach more amazing middlers.
We're looking forward to our next road trip with you. Until then, thanks for riding shotgun.
How did we do?
You did great.